And welcome everybody to the Between Two Wheels podcast, stage 7 in the Dauphine today. We're going to do a few other items as well. The Dauphine looks to end kind of how it started on a bad weather note. Froome crash watch reaches day 4. We'll give you some injury updates as well. Dumouline, he abandons the Dauphine to focus on the Tour, or is he still nursing that big injury? Nearby the Dauphine, the Tour de Suisse starts today, and we give you the results of that as well. News from around the world, things that make you go, some winners and losers. Let's get ready to go. All right. Thanks for joining, everyone. My name is Tyler Janke. In case you don't, you're new to the show, I'm a cyclist here in Northern California. We give news commentary of the Northern California scene, but we also do it for the World Tour, and especially this time of year with the Tour de France coming up. We dig into it just a little bit more. The Dauphine is 8 stages. We've been doing stage by stage this week, mostly because I'm exhausted about it, by the way, but mostly because we're just trying to give a week of input and kind of prep for the Tour de France, see how we can do. Maybe we can be more efficient. We're trying to give you some good info. It just happened to work out perfectly too, with Chris Froome going down and a wreck. There's a lot of news happening, and this is a prime race to see how and who is going to be ready for the Tour de France. We got the Dauphine finishing up tomorrow. We have the Tour de Suisse nearby, starting today, ending next week, and those two races culminate in kind of how the GC riders, the general classification riders, are going to be, and how they're going to be coming out looking at the Tour de France. Okay, Froome watch day 4. Well, we had an update on his crash. Additional injuries to his sternum and vertebrae. Actually, they've both been fractures. There's also a note here from the doctors indicating that Chris Froome suffered fractures to his sternum and the C7 neck vertebrae, as well as his right femur, elbow, and ribs during this crash at the Dauphine, meaning he could possibly be in the hospital up to 6 weeks and need 6 months to fully recover. So look, every day we're finding out more. He's kind of just a bag of bones at this point. My wife had commented, maybe it's good if you have extra meat on your body, so that when you go down in these wrecks, you can actually protect yourself a little bit. I don't know if that was a fat joke to me. Either way, Chris, very skinny. I think he may actually be lucky he's somewhat survived as well as he did. No head problems. I mean, he could have been really out of sorts for this race. So anyway, that's kind of the what I've been seeing around the internet a lot right now is he had this kind of parallel issue that came about, which was the result of the 2011 Vuelta, and with that, Juan Jose Cobo getting his tour revoked. It looks like Froome is probably going to be taking over, and he's going to be able to have the win for that. So then I've heard different commentary. I've heard the British side saying, "Oh, what a shame it is that he did not be able to be the first British Grand Tour winner. Instead, he would have probably been in line to lead the Tour de France the next year instead of Wiggins. He probably would have won that. Maybe he would have been knighted instead of Bradley Wiggins. Maybe this, all these kind of things that didn't affect different contract issues." Yes, I understand all that. And then there's other ones that are showing videos of Froome and Cobo, who, Froome only lost by 13 seconds. Someone pointed out in our viewer mailbag that Froome actually went around the course, the Vuelta, the Tour of Spain, in the fastest time. Cobo actually won it due to bonus seconds that he picked up. Now, look, it's like, hey, this shouldn't be the case. Froome actually was the faster rider, but that's not the way the game is played. In the States, we have, the electoral college and the popular vote. It's like getting the most RBIs, but losing the game. This is how it's set up. So I get that. And then other people are pointing out how fast these two were climbing. One has been shown to be a possible cheat. He can obviously appeal. That's Cobo. Froome, on the other hand, is getting this. Now, last year, we were all in the mix at this time of, is Froome going to be able to even race the Tour because of his Tour of Spain salbutamol positive? Anyway, is there an implication there that Froome maybe is dirty as well? It is weird to see. Yes, there's an implication obviously going out there. I'm not saying that, but it is interesting to see when you have the rider that beats the next, 2 or so riders barely, and he is obviously dirty according to everyone. I mean, George Bennett put a tweet out this week that he one race, I think he was going over to China. He said he's sitting next to kind of a fat mechanic. And then he realizes, no, it's not a mechanic. It's actually Juan Jose Cobo. He's like, hey, he was dirty. Everyone knew he was dirty. Okay. Well, if you know he's dirty, are you going to, maybe you should make some comments. Obviously, you can't libel yourself. So maybe you're not going to be saying this, but they're willing to speak out about Cobo. Are they making the same assertions about Chris? I don't know. How far down does it go? These are these issues we have. Yes. Let's get into stage 7, the Dauphiné. Today, Saint-Genix-la-Villages to Les Sept-la-Pipe, 133 kilometers. Couldn't find anything out about either one of these two. I think they're just little villages in there. The route basically started to move east, had a few dips and turns around there. They get to right to Chambéry, and then they headed due south, kind of along the river there, and crossed over until they went up the final climb at Pipe. There's 8 categorized climbs, Cat 2 near the finish. I'm sorry, HC climb at the finish. There's only 4 climbs. That was yesterday. We had 8 climbs. 4 climbs, 4 Cat 4s, short distance, 133 kilometers. Let's go over what the GC was started. The general classification was starting the day. Just a reminder, Adam Yates in first place, Dylan Toynes in second, Van Garderen in third at 7 seconds, Fuglsang 7 seconds back and forth, Kreuzwick, Pinot, Buckman, Lutsenko. Lutsenko is only 30 seconds out. Little foreshadowing of what we have coming up for today. Okay. Starting the day, I mentioned Tom Dumouline is not going to be in the race. He has bowed out. And with that, he decided to quit the Critérium du Dauphiné before the decisive mountain stages after feeling some irritation in his knee he injured during the Giro. The Team Sunweb leader is still expected to ride the Tour de France, but will travel back to the Netherlands for a scan before heading to altitude on Monday for a final block of training. You know, that's what I mentioned yesterday was, hey, you don't want to injure yourself in a much more dramatic fashion, maybe career ending, by continuing to push on and on, just trying to get through a nagging injury. Yes, your Tour de France is over. Or maybe your Tour de France could be over. Your Giro is obviously over. You still have the Vuelta, but you know, if you want to be racing maybe next year, you don't want to put yourself in a position to prolong this and make it worse. He was quoted as saying, "It's been a solid week of racing, and it was good to gain some racing rhythm. Yesterday after the stage, I felt pretty good, but during the evening, the irritation started to come back. I feel like there's no need to push it with the knee, so rest is a good option before I continue with a quality training block at altitude. It's been good to get back into the rhythm, but if we don't want to push the knee, we'll rest for the weekend, then back to at altitude on Monday." So good luck to him. Speaking of injury, one I saw here was Yosheba Balaki had gone down. I'm trying to remember the year. It's the famous year of Lance and Balaki coming down the climb, taking a right-hand turn, Balaki and Lance locking it up, going off the road. Balaki high sides it, lands over on his hip. I think he broke his tibia at the time. Could have been his femur. Lance goes through the cornfield or whatever that was, comes out the other side, jumps on, gets pushed by Hamilton, who had a broken collarbone, you know, that whole wacky stuff that was going on in that year. Balaki was really never the same after that. And he had made a comment about Froome, you know, you're going to mark your career now from this point. Well, Dumouline doesn't want to mark his career from this point as well. So he's going to take some time. Rest is always best. It's the best way to get back there. Okay, race recap for today. Yesterday's winner, Julian Alaphilippe, started the fires early on. He decided to get out ahead in the first Cat 1 climbs and get some points for the King of the Mountain jersey. As he does so, everyone starts to join in. Next thing you know, you have 29 riders up the road. The weather was fine, they said at the start, but there was hailing and raining at the finish. So soon the riders got into this mix, and it's just a whole unleash of hell of bad weather. That break of 29 has Lutsenko in it, has Mike Woods in it. And pretty soon they have about 4 minutes lead. Like I had mentioned up front, Lutsenko is about 30 seconds out. So obviously this was a threat to Yates. It was a threat to Poles, Fuglsang, some of the other riders. And Mitchelton Scott and Ineos both get on the front. Well, Movistar actually for Quintana get on the front to do a little work. That break starts to wield itself down, pairing out until there's like 9 left. They have about a minute and a half. They start into that last long climb. And next thing you know, it's just Woods and Lutsenko. Woods looks really good. But I think being out in that break, doing a lot of work all day long, finally you're going to see that be a problem. About 5K to go. It's those two. Richie Port is having trouble. Next thing you know, Quintana takes a break, a flyer out the front. Kwiatkowski goes up to join him. They don't quite make it all the way up to the front of Woods and Lutsenko. Woods and Lutsenko come back. Quintana comes back. Kwiatkowski comes back. Richie Port's having a hard time hanging on. Kwiatkowski's having some issues. You still see up there in the front, though, TJ Van Garderen, Pinot, Wout Poels, Fuglsang, Dan Martin. So the main guys were still being able to, Bardet, they were all still being able to hang on. Coming up near the 2K to go, Jacob Fuglsang takes off with Buckman. They have a pretty good lead. A few guys, Dan Martin, I think, and Bardet try to bridge. They're not able to make it across. Next thing you know, Wout Poels takes off. He's actually able to bridge up right about 500 meters. He's still off the back. He finally pushes forward about 200, comes through, pops them over the line, and gets the win with a dramatic post up. Wout Poels of Team Ineos gets the win, 1 second back. Fuglsang, Bachmann. Then in fourth place, you have Pinot at 10 seconds, Dan Martin, Adam Yates. Adam Yates didn't look great on the day, but obviously well enough to only limit the limit down to 10 seconds, but he does lose the jersey in the case. Romain Bardet seemed to recover a little bit better. He gets seventh place at 13 seconds. TJ Van Garderen held pretty well at 16. Dylan Toynes, ninth place, 30 seconds. He drops kind of out of the top three there. Bjorg Lambrecht, Lutsenko, Woods, Quintana, Port, Sepp Kuss up there in the top 15. Stephen Kreuzwick, Guillaume, and Warren Barguil had some trouble getting 19th on the day. All right. Well, with that, you are seeing, look, so the overall picture changes pretty good for the day. You have Fuglsang now in the yellow jersey, Adam Yates 8 seconds back. Van Garderen still in third at 20 seconds back. Bachmann 21. Dylan Toynes down to sixth place. Kreuzwick at 120. Dan Martin at 120. Quintana 120. Port. So those guys, you end up Woods. He's 224. Look, the only ones you really see that have any shot here is probably Adam Yates still at 8 seconds back. Van Garderen at 20 with tomorrow's stage. He's going to have to get in a break. He didn't ride in a way today that I could see him. The only people I could see maybe getting some time I could see Adam Yates because he's pretty explosive and you can see him in the last 2K type of guy. Look, today they were climbing that last climb in the big ring. You can't, I mean, that's pretty tough. Yates needs some steepness, some small ring climbing to get away. So you're probably going to see Fuglsang. He won it 2 years ago, the Dauphine. Did not be able to back that up in the Tour that year, but nevertheless, he'll probably end up winning this tomorrow. I could see him holding on. He's had stellar spring season. We've talked about that, how he's been, winning. He was up there in Amstel Gold. He didn't win that. It was his second. He ended up winning the Ardennes Classics there. So good for him. Tomorrow's stage, 7 cat climbs, a 3, 2, a 3, a 1, 3, a 1, and a 3. So I don't know if there's enough there with that cat 3, but it's only 113 kilometers. Should have some fireworks, but I don't know if it's enough really to break it up to the point where you're going to have a change in the overall. You could see, TJ come out of the top. Well, that's actually, those kind of climbs are more his deal. So I can see the top 3 being exactly where you're at for the final for the Dauphine. Okay, some other cycling news around the Tour de Suisse started. Look, it's the other prep race. I mentioned yesterday that the UHC rally team was in there. I didn't really see any big GC hitters. So of those, you have Geraint Thomas and Bernal. That's really the duo I want to see. I know they're teammates, but I kind of want to see that in fight between those two. That should be fairly good to watch. As far as the GC riders go today on the overall for the time trial, it was just an out and back, no elevation change at all. You had Rohan Dennis of the Bahrain Merida team winning it. 1 second back was Magic Baudnar and Michael Matthews out there in 6th place for the Americans. EF Education first, 5 seconds back. Lawson Craddock, that was really impressive. Other than that, you're looking at the GC riders. Geraint Thomas was 13th place at 17 seconds. Jonathan Castrovejo, 18th place. He's not for the overall, but I'm just giving perspective of kind of, he's a well-known time trialer. He did well. I think winner Anaconda, 16th place, 18 seconds. I think Bernal was another 6 seconds behind that. So, look, tomorrow will be a better day to watch. Time trial as it was. You had Rowan Dennis. It's everything you expected. And, world time trial champion coming out there. Just some highlights from that. Geraint Thomas put in a strong ride, and this is obviously his final preparation for the tour. So he's really on a test. His teammate, like I said, was another 6 seconds back. Fabio Aru is kind of now he's making it back from he's had iliac artery surgery, and he's had a horrible last few years. That's the same surgery Joe Dombrowski had a few years ago, and I think it's saying it's like riding on one leg. So we'll see if that surgery is now being able to correct it to have these guys, him a little more fit and kind of back to where he was a few years ago when he was contending for the Giro. The Italian's time, he was 11:20, so he was just inside the top 40. I just wanted to point this out. There's a Mont Ventoux race, 175-kilometer course. Starts in Vaison-la-Romaine, and it loops over 4 lesser climbs before climbing the classic approach from Bédoin to the 1,912 meter summit. This is so basically someone is putting on a 1-day climb race up to Mont Ventoux. I think it's just next week after the Dauphine. So you have it's not a normal. So some of the riders that are signed up for Roman Bardet of AG2R, Lachlan Morton, Joe Dombrowski, Jesus Herrera, Darwin Adapuma of the Groupama team. So it was a news article in Vela News. I'm pretty excited to actually watch that if we were able to get any of that, because it should be a pretty good epic climbing race. I don't think the tour goes over Ventoux this year. I'll have to check that. All right, some things that make you go, Well, I mentioned this the other day that this Patrick Van Jansen was accused of abusing some of his riders. There's some weird stuff going on. Well, now he says he's going to take legal action against the women who have alleged the abuse. At the same time, now 6 other riders are corroborating the abuse that took place. Looks like he may be in some trouble with this. When you start having this many people pile on and assuming that they're saying the same stories, it's going to be not so good for him. Well, now, I don't know if what he was doing was illegal or it's just against business practices of how as an example, it's not against the law to just be a jerk, right? You can be a jerk to people, but you can't discriminate. I don't know what all the laws are there where they're at, if they're in Belgium or France, but if he's just a jerk to them, that's one thing, but it's probably not going to bode well for him being a team manager. So we'll keep you up to date on that. Okay, some winners and losers. I'm picking a winner today, Lawson Craddock for his individual time trial in the Tour de Suisse, getting 6th place, only 5 seconds behind the world time trial champion. It's good to see him. Last year we saw him in Liège coming out really well. I didn't see him so good on those, but to do a time trial like this, hopefully he'll ride the Tour this year. Last year he became famous in the Tour for being really beat up and coming in last place basically from day one through the final. And he raised a ton of money for a velodrome in Texas. I think it was Houston that had been ravaged by the hurricane there. Basically for every day that he was going to do it, people would donate money and he would match it. And I think he raised a bunch of money to help rebuild that velodrome. So it's really good to see him coming back through with a good time trial. Losers on the day. Well, on this day before Father's Day, it doesn't feel right to just pick a loser. But if I did, I would probably pick Richie Porte. He had a hard time holding on. His team did not look to be supportive. I mean, there was Sepp Kuss was up there with Kreuzwick. EF Education First had Nate Brown. They had TJ and Mike Woods. Dylan Barrell was there up there for Ineos. Everybody else had somebody, but he had nobody, and he was suffering. And he can't do that if he's expecting to come through for the Tour this year. He's had a much worse year than you would expect from this year than he had last year. Of course, he seems to have some crash problems and some issues when he gets into the Tour, but I would like to see him competitive. And this is a wide open year with Chris Froome out. Now I say that with Geraint Thomas dominating everybody last year, but one more guy out, Chris even so was there supporting him. So if it's a little bit more wide open and maybe Team Ineos isn't as strong as their predecessor Sky last year, then that would be fun. And I would like to see Richie Porte come through. So not necessarily pulling for the win, but just to make it a little more exciting. So he's the loser of the day for kind of suffering only in the context of the Dauphiné as it is today, because this is still plenty early. And I heard yesterday someone saying that it's not since I think Lance back early 2000 maybe that the winner of this Tour de Suisse has gone on to win the Tour de France. So he's not in the, he won the Swiss last year. He obviously didn't win the Tour. I'm just throwing that out. It's not anything to do with Richie. It's just kind of a thought that came into my head. Anyway, thanks for joining us today. This is episode 128. Appreciate you joining in. Go ahead and make us some comments. All interactions help the show out there. Appreciate those that have been joining in on the YouTube channel. We'll read some mailbag the next time we come up, and probably give you a recap on Father's Day for the final day of the Dauphiné. Thanks for joining. Bye.